Hi everyone and welcome to my latest time-lapse video. This time it's my own little dog Harry McClary, and I decided to work on a personal project as I was trialing UART pastel paper for the first time. So this is on UART 400 paper, and I hope you enjoy the build-up of this. There will be a full tutorial on my Patreon coming very soon. So the piece was really small, it's just 8 inches square. I just wanted to try this out without committing to a really large painting. Although sometimes with pastel it's making your life a little more difficult by working smaller. But in this case I just wanted to try a small head study, and immediately I start working the background. And this paper behaves quite differently to the papers that I'm used to, so it took a little while to get the feel of it. And I'm not sure yet that I would be completely comfortable painting a complicated background. But I think I got on okay just for this. It's a lovely rich purple in the background to set off all those lovely colours within Harry McClary's fur. But this is the UART 400 paper, and it comes in a variety of different grits, so 200 being the roughest and 800 being the finest, so it's feels a little bit like sandpaper to me. And the 400, which is just in the middle, I decided to try it first to get a feel for the paper, but I think I would really like to try the 800. I feel it would be easier to get the details on the 800 grit. I find the rougher the paper you go, the harder it is to get the details. So if you're into getting really fine detail in your work, perhaps the rougher papers aren't for you. And another thing I found about working on UART, which I'm not used to, my blending finger was extremely sore by the end of this, as it literally is like rubbing sandpaper. So I had to try and get out of the habit of blending with my finger. And like most of the other pastel papers, I also found that you needed to get a few layers of pastel onto the paper first before it would really blend and move around. But this is something I've found in common with most pastel papers that are designed to take many layers of pastel. You really need to get 2 or 3 layers of pastel on the paper before it's really workable. But a bit like the pastel mat and the Hannibal velour that I regularly use, the UART accepted many layers. I didn't manage to fill the paper at any point, and it still allowed me to put really light colours on top of very dark colours, which is so important with pastel. So in a lot of ways I was really impressed with this paper. I'll definitely try it out again. I'm not sure that I was totally sold on it for pet portraits, although with this one in particular he has so much wiry hair that I did think that the rougher texture of paper might suit that. But I would love to come back and try the UART again for still life, or perhaps a street scene or landscape, something like that. I think it would be excellent for trying to work in a more painterly style in pastel. So I made use of some pastel pencils as well, normally putting down the soft pastel first and using the pencils to shape everything into place. But I go into a lot more detail about this kind of thing on my Patreon channel. If you're interested in seeing the real-time footage from this, along with full narration and colour codes, I go into a lot more detail about the colours I choose, the marks I make, and of course talking about the papers and the pastels that I use. I use mostly Unison colour pastels, along with several other brands, and at the moment I'm trying to experiment on lots of different pastel papers, hoping to make a whole series of videos so that I can really compare the difference between all the papers, and who knows, perhaps even find a paper that I prefer working on the velour that I've used for so long. I think I spent about 6 hours in total on this portrait, so a very small piece, but still quite a lot of time put into building up those layers. And the thing that I found difficult on the UART was trying to make my marks appear soft. So unlike on some other pastel papers, it's a bit easier to make your marks appear like soft fur. On the UART, I found the marks I made were a little harsh, and I really had to work at it to make it appear soft. But again, that's not necessarily a downside. It means that this paper is really useful for some subject matters, perhaps more than others. And working around the chest area and around his chin, that was really the most difficult part for me. Lots of lighter highlighted hairs with darkness in the background, so trying to keep that nice sharp contrast between his wiry whiskers and the dark fur underneath. And I use pastel pencil, but also some of the edges of the bigger pastels to create those very fine wiry hairs. This is a little rescue dog that we found in Spain almost exactly a year ago now, and he was a total mess when we found him. And even though he's still a bit of a scruff, this is him all cleaned up a year later. It's about as tidy as I can make him look. His beard and whiskers just do their own thing. So you can really see the texture of the paper as I'm filling in the gaps. And you can use a tool to blend with if you're trying to avoid sore fingertips. I do use some little paper tortillons and other types of blenders. I suppose I'm just in the habit of blending with my fingers. But I hope I'll have another chance soon to experiment with UART. I really enjoyed this. And I hope you find it useful to see me working on a different paper for a change. Pretty much the same techniques apply. Your colour theory, your mark making. In the finer details, you're having to do things slightly differently, but really from paper to paper, just your basic pastel techniques work across the board. So if you're interested in learning some of my pastel techniques, visit me on my Patreon channel. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to me here on YouTube. Lots more content coming soon. Thanks for watching.